Howdy folks, welcome back to Boondockery. Today's video is a tutorial for a do-it-yourself PVC cache container. In just a few days, I'm going to be teaching two classes at the Old School Survival Boot Camp, one of which is cache placement. Last year, I taught a class on caches. One of the things I was wanting to do last year, but I ran out of time, was to build a few do-it-yourself PVC pipe cache containers. And this year, I have time to where I can create those for this next class, and I just thought I would make a short tutorial video to show you how it's done. Before we get into it, I want to go over a few pros and cons of using PVC pipe and fittings to create cache containers. First of all, PVC is very versatile. I mean, you can do a lot of different things with it. It's easy to work with. If any of you have ever done any type of plumbing at your house and you've used PVC, you know how easy it is to work with. It can be painted or stained, so you can change the color up if you want. It's fairly lightweight. What I'm using is the lighter weight pipe and fittings that are available. There are really heavy duty versions called Schedule 40, and that is much more heavy and durable. You have a lot of creative possibilities with these things. As a matter of fact, back in the day when PVC pipe and fittings were very, very inexpensive, there were tons of books out there on how to build your own furniture out of PVC pipe. I can't possibly see doing that today with the cost. It is weatherproof, and depending on which thickness of pipe and fittings you use, it can also be extremely weather resistant to extreme colds and high temperatures. It will not rust. You can make any length that you want just by cutting the length of pipe to the size that you want. So that way you determine what the volume is going to be for your cache container. It comes in a lot of different diameters. You can go from very small to very, very wide. Now, those are some of the pros. The cons: it's expensive. It's very expensive. And compared to what it was just 5 years ago, if it's not gone up by double, it's really close. So today it's not an affordable option if you're getting everything new. When you are cutting it, especially if you're using power tools to cut it with, it can be a little brittle, especially the thinner stuff that I'm using, the Schedule 40. Can also have some brittle issues with it, so you just need to take your time with it while you're cutting the lengths of pipe that you want in order to prevent that from breaking and chipping off. It makes a huge mess. This project makes a huge mess because I'm going to be doing a lot of sanding. When you're cutting the pipe, you have all those little shavings of PVC, and they will stick to everything. The static electricity is very active in all those little particles, and they will stick to just about anything. It does require a decent amount of prep to do any type of staining or painting. It's not that big a deal. It just, you have to do it if you want the paint to stick. If you don't prep the PVC pipe, paint doesn't stick to it very well. There's a lot of different ways that you can remedy that, and I'll go over some of those. Staining the PVC pipe doesn't require as much prep. However, if you do want to scuff up the PVC pipe a little bit, you'll have a deeper stain which will last longer than if you just leave it smooth and untreated. Schedule 40 pipe is very, very tough. And it's also very, very expensive. It is significantly heavier to use than the thickness of PVC pipe that I'm using. Like I said, this stuff ain't cheap. If you happen to have some laying around the house from old projects that you've done in the past, that's fantastic. Or you happen to know someone, a neighbor, a friend that has some laying around, you'd probably be able to buy it from them a lot cheaper than buying the stuff new. However, you can also go to construction sites. Construction's going on constantly, and PVC is used a lot, especially for the pipe. The pipe sections that are trimmed off from what they don't need from the big lengths usually go in the dumpster. If you talk to the site foreman or the site manager, you probably be able to convince them to allow you to go through the dumpster after working hours or at a particular designated time and be able to get those free of charge. Not so much the fittings. However, I personally have a fantastic source for PVC pipe and fittings, and that is Habitat for Humanity's Restore. Whenever Habitat for Humanity goes on site to refurbish an existing home, they take everything out of it. Everything that's still functional and has use goes to the Restore. Any of the items that they have left after their house remodeling and refurbishing will also go to the Restore. And when you go to the Restore, you can get fantastic, usually older, completely functional items, all the way to brand new, still in the box because they over purchased for that particular project and it went to the Restore. I've found a lot of different fittings there over the years, and also all kinds of other things that I've been able to use for other projects. But those are just a couple options that you have to be able to purchase some of these items or acquire some of these items without having to buy them new. Now I'm actually going to be creating 4 different caches. I'm doing one that's 12 inches, 2 that are 18 inches, and 1 which is 36 inches. For each one of these lengths of PVC pipe, I will need a 4-inch cap. I will need a 4-inch clean out fitting and a 4-inch threaded clean out fitting cap. I will also need to have some PVC primer and some PVC cement. I'm going to be using both medium and fine grit sandpaper. I'm actually opting for the sponges. I just think those are much easier to use and to be able to work with PVC, and it makes a little bit less mess than when you're using a hand sander, but if you're working with the stuff outside, it doesn't really matter. And also just some plumber's tape. Now, for those of you that have never worked with PVC pipe or fittings before, you know, you have your pipe, you have your fittings, and yeah, they go on. You got to sort of force them. But the one thing about PVC is it's very slick, and it doesn't facilitate bonding from the PVC cement. So what you need to do is you need to use your sandpaper to rough up whatever surfaces are touching. And that does a couple different things. One of which, it lessens the diameter, both the exterior and the interior diameter, so you have a smoother fit. But it also takes a little bit of that fine sheen off of the outside and facilitates the PVC cement to do what it does. And what it does, it doesn't work like Elmer's glue, where it just is between two things and it dries and those two things are sort of stuck together. PVC cement will actually melt or soften the PVC just a little bit, so when you put the two pieces together, that softened PVC is actually going to harden, and as it does, it will harden and bond together. So you're actually, it's almost like welding with a chemical adhesive with the PVC. So any of the parts that you're going to be putting on here, whether or not it's the cap, it's the threaded access, clean out section, you want to go ahead and sand all of those items. I'm going to be, for the pipe, I'm going to be sanding the entire surface of this because I will be either staining or painting this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as opposed to just the areas to where I'm going to fit. Once I've done that, any of the areas on the interior of the fittings, I'm going to go ahead and sand those, and everything will be ready to prime and cement. This is very messy, so I'm going to do this outside, and when I'm finished, I'll bring everything back in and I'll show you how to prime and cement and fit the pieces that we're using for this particular project. Now I've done all my sanding. As you can see, this is one that's not been sanded. It has much more of that reflective quality, and this one is much more matte. Now I've sanded all the interiors of my fittings as well as the exterior. The exterior is to facilitate the paint to adhere better, and the interior of the fittings and the exterior of the PVC pipe in order to facilitate the primer and the cement to do its chemical welding process the way it should and to get a much better fit. Now the primer and the cement both have a very strong odor, and you really should do this in a well ventilated area or outside. My bushcraft laboratory is pretty well ventilated because of the lack of insulation. Now when you're doing your primer, make sure you get any of the drips off of there because this will stain everything. And you are simply going to put the primer on every surface that's going to have the cement applied to it. And you're going to do this on both the pipe and the fittings. I'm going to finish up the priming for the pipe, and then I'll come back to the cementing. I've opened up my garage doors just to really maximize that ventilation for this, because this is a very strong vapor and definitely well ventilated or outside to do this. We're going to move on to our cement. This is a transparent or clear cement, and it is specifically designed to be food and water friendly. You can actually create large water storage containers with this, and it's perfectly safe to consume that water that has gone through this. It's designed primarily for home plumbing, so don't worry about that. And I'm going to go through, and just like I did with the primer, I'm going to go through and put a good coat of the adhesive or the cement in here, and I'm going to coat both the interior of the fittings and the exterior of the pipe. I'm going to let that set 3 to 5 minutes to allow that to begin to soften up, and then I'm going to bring it back and we'll slide the pieces together. I've left the cement on there about 3 minutes, and what that does is it softens it just a little bit. I'm going to very quickly do another very light coat of the cement all the way around on both the pipe and the fitting, because in that 3 to 5 minutes it will begin to harden just a tiny little bit. It's tacky, and we want this to slide together fairly quickly and easily. Now this is going to facilitate a good weld. One of the things that you also want to do is make sure you get that rim, so that way we get a good watertight seal on there. Okay, it is a good snug fit all the way down and seated. I'm going to let this sit for a few minutes and let that weld sort of do its thing, and then I will repeat the process with the threaded clean out fitting. I've primed it, I've cemented it, and again, this is very vaporous, so make certain that you're closing these up in between uses, not only to protect your lungs, but also if you accidentally bump this over, this will stain everything it touches. Okay, we're going to slide this into place. And we have a good proper seating in there all the way around. I'm going to take a piece of paper towel and I'm going to clean up that just a tiny little bit, and just because it's me, that's what I do. It definitely would not hurt it, but I'm just going to clean it up because that's what I do. Once this sits overnight and the welding has completed, it's ready to use. The interior volume of this, because I've calculated the 12-inch by 4-inch capacity, in addition to the amount of space which is left over inside the lid with this on, and it's roughly right around 170 cubic inches or 2.8 liters, so almost 3 liter capacity or volume in this. When this has completely cured and all of these components are welded together, you can screw on the lid. Now that's where this Teflon plumber's tape comes in handy. This stuff is absolutely fantastic. You can use silicone or plumber's putty, things like that, if you want something to really stay bonded for a long time, and you will need to have a pipe wrench or a crescent wrench to get it off. This plumber's tape, literally all you need to do, you take it one time around for the entire course of the threads. And you tear that off. This should screw on fairly easily, and when it's completely seated, you should have a waterproof seal, and it can come off easily as well with the plumber's tape. You could always put a little bit of plumber's tape inside the cache container if you're worried about opening up and closing it, tearing the plumber's tape, and making that seal not as effective. This is super cheap, super small, to put it right in there, so that way you can maintain a waterproof container. Well folks, there you have it. A very quick and easy do-it-yourself PVC cache container. I know a lot of you aren't into burying your stuff, and you're thinking, well, you know, what's the point? Well, this type of container could come in handy for all types of outdoor uses. If you have anything that you want to keep safe from harm and, you know, safe from being exposed to any moisture, a container like this would be great. I can see uses for this in kayaking and canoeing, and even camping. Where I live, we occasionally have some bear in the area, but once they smell humans, they're getting as far away from us as they possibly can. My neck of the woods, the critters that are around my camp, if they're going to be sticking around, there's none of them could get into this if I wanted to use this for a critter-proof food container. You can very easily find ways to use 550 cord or webbing in order to be able to secure these to the exterior of a backpack or to suspend from a tree. And so a lot of different possibilities for this container. I'm simply using this one for my cache class this coming weekend. Well, folks, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. In just a few days, I'm going to be teaching 2 classes at the Old School Survival Boot Camp, one of which is cache placement. Last year, I taught a class. Now, before we get into it, I just wanted to go over a few pros and cons as to why you would pros and cons, and you explain to him what you're doing. He might. I've also sanded the exterior in order to get that good and proper welding to. And you could also do any type of, let's just say you're not exactly into burying your stuff for short term or long term.